So good morning, everybody. As we're collecting ourselves and getting here, I want to invite everyone to just take a comfortable seat, and we'll take a few breaths together to really simply settle in. Inhaling and exhaling. Simply being here. Letting go of what was going on earlier today. And thanking yourself for giving yourself this gift of time. Time to simply be. So the Parsha this week is Shalech Lecha. And in this Parsha, Moses instructs 12 scouts to go into Canaan and then report back about the quality of the land and the people that are there. And the purpose of this scouting mission is really to see what kind of resistance they're going to run into as they enter this land that God has said is going to be yours. So there's this notion that God's kind of with them. So what's really interesting is that 10 of these scouts came back and painted a very grim picture. And they said, the country that we traveled and scouted is one that devours its settlers. All the people that we saw in it are of great size, and we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. That really grabs my attention. We looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. So I think that it's very interesting how our personal perspective ends up coloring everything. You know, I get curious, why did these 10 scouts see themselves small like grasshoppers, kind of diminished and constricted and insignificant? And then 2 of the scouts, Caleb and Joshua, didn't. And Caleb and Joshua go on to say, it's going to be tough. These are big people and they have these gigantic fruits and vegetables, but we will prevail. So there are a couple of things about this that really are, I think, quite interesting. And one is that we do have conditioned habitual responses. You know, we're taught either very consciously by our parents in our community, and sometimes absolutely not consciously, how to be in the world. And we get these lessons when we're really little, and they kind of seep into our bones, into our being. And sometimes we don't even realize that we have this kind of conditioning. So I'll give you an example from my life. I have been conditioned that I and we and she and he, no, I and she and he are used for individuals, and that we and they are words that are used for plural, for more than one person. We're now in a time, and they'll have been for the last several years, where they is a singular pronoun. And I have a really hard time with that. And I'm not having a hard time with it because I disagree with using they as a singular pronoun for people for whom that is more comfortable. My tongue just doesn't want to go there. I don't want to say I am meeting them for lunch. If it's one person, to me, that sounds like I'm meeting a group. Anyway, so that's an example. Another example is really a silly example. As you all know, that I have this wonderful dog, and she has some really ingrained responses that clearly are related to her backstory that I know nothing about. So these are habitual responses that I'm having with my pronouns and that Demi is having with other issues. So these 10 scouts really got frightened and saw themselves as really little and insignificant, and ended up exaggerating the truth of their encounter because they were so scared. And their response to being frightened was, oh, let's go back to Egypt. At least there we know what we're dealing with. And I don't think that that's so uncommon for us. Let me go back to George W. Bush. At least I knew what I was dealing with. Couldn't believe during the Trump administration how I would have relished that. So we often do this to ourselves. We get frightened about something and we forget that we actually have the tools to deal with whatever the new obstacle is. These scouts forgot that they had a promise from God that they would prevail. And we sometimes forget to take a few breaths and calm ourselves down so that we can discern if what's frightening us is something realistic that we need to figure out how to deal with, or if we're blowing it out of proportion because it's out of our habitual perspective that's coloring our view. So it was interesting to me that the Parsha ends with the instruction about wearing tzitzit as a reminder. And the line that I will quote is that God is talking to Moses, instruct them to make for themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout the ages. Look at it and recall all the commandments of Yud-Heh, Vav-Heh, and observe them. So the tzitzit are really a reminder to remember. Remember what you know. Remember that we were redeemed and that whatever your current situation is, whatever that current Egypt, narrow, constricted place is, you've got tools to cope. Mindfulness is really about remembering. Remembering that we have the tools to manage and to cope with whatever our current personal or communal constrictions or narrow places might be. And forgetting is the opposite of mindfulness. So I'd like to invite you to take your seat now and check your posture. You know, we like that nice straight back, broad across the chest, an open heart space. And take a couple of cleansing breaths. And I'm going to actually read something that I came upon this week that I think is really pretty magnificent, related to this Parsha. And after I finish reading this piece, we'll have some silence, and I'll call you back to the room with my voice. Sholech lecha, send yourself forth. The unknown awaits you, new lands to be discovered, new ways of being that are promised, hoped for, imagined. Shalech lecha, send yourself forth. There are so many beginnings awaiting your arrival. Yes, the soul says, I will go. I will step forward in new ways. I will see with new eyes. I will explore what can be different, exciting, promising, possible. Yes, I will go. There is so much to be discovered, so much to be enjoyed. But one step forward and the mind begins to spin. You can't do this. You don't have the tools, the insights, the imagination to change, to grow, to become. Go back to being tiny, to being small. Go back to the narrow place. The mystery calls. Notice that when fears take hold, the mind constricts and vision narrows. And the thoughts that inspire doubt and insist on fear are perceived as the only truths. In a moment of spaciousness, when our perspective expands, it is possible to see that much of the fear and doubt are only stories that the mind has conjured. How to return to a spacious perspective? How to discern illusion and truth? The call from the mystery rings like a bell. Practice. Do mitzvot. Engage in acts of connection. Give thanks. Acknowledge beauty. Respond with compassion. Offer help. Seek guidance. Listen well. Engage with ritual. Do acts of justice. Speak words of blessing. Engaging in these actions will help expand our perspectives and deepen our discernment so we can better see what is most true. Shalech lecha, send yourself forth. The mystery calls. Expansive possibilities await your arrival. I invite you to begin to deepen your breath and bring your attention outward. And as you slowly and gently come back to the room, going to share a poem. You reading this, Be Ready, by William Stafford. Starting here, what do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor? What scent of old wood hovers? What softened sound from outside fills the air? Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lifting this new glimpse that you found, carry into evening all that you want from this day. This interval you spent reading or hearing this, keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now, starting here, right in this room, when you turn around? And I failed to give attribution to the reading I did at the beginning of our meditation, so I want to make sure that you have, that you know that, that reading was from Rabbi Yael Levy from a book called Directing the Heart.